A president wants oil, and he wants it now. Inside the White House, America's most powerful energy executives are preparing for a meeting they never asked for. Across the table sits Donald Trump, a man convinced that Venezuela's oil can be turned back on. Quickly, decisively, almost effortlessly. But oil does not obey confidence. It obeys systems. Trump believes billions of dollars are ready to move. The executives know something else. Sanctions are still in place. Infrastructure is fragile. Security is uncertain. And trust is the rarest commodity of all. This is not a technical debate. It is a test of power, a test of how far political will can bend economic reality. If you want to understand how modern governments pressure markets, pay attention, because this moment is not really about Venezuela. It's about whether speed can override structure. And to grasp that, we must first understand what problem Trump is truly trying to solve. To do that, we need to step back and define what is actually at stake. So what is really at stake here? On the surface, this looks like an oil story. Barrels, pipelines, production targets, but that is not the core issue. The real question is control. Who sets the timeline? Who defines what is possible? Politics or markets? For President Trump, Venezuela represents speed. A country with massive oil reserves, a chance to prove that decisive leadership can unlock value quickly, and a signal to voters and rivals that American power still works. For the oil industry, Venezuela represents risk. Not abstract risk, operational risk, legal risk, political risk. Executives are not asking whether Venezuela has oil. Everyone knows it does. They are asking whether rules will hold, whether security will last, whether today's permission becomes tomorrow's penalty. This gap between political ambition and institutional reality is where tension lives. And it explains why both sides are talking past each other. To understand why this gap is so wide, we have to look backward at how Venezuela's oil system arrived here in the first place. To understand this moment, we have to rewind. Venezuela was not always a cautionary tale. For decades, it was an oil powerhouse, reliable, productive, central to global energy markets. Before Hugo Chavez came to power in 1999, Venezuela produced more than 3 million barrels of oil per day. That output was not accidental. It was the result of institutions, experienced operators, and a system that rewarded long-term investment. Then the system changed. Political control tightened. Technical expertise drained away. Capital fled. Over time, production collapsed. By the time the United States moved to capture Nicolas Maduro, Venezuela was producing around 1 million barrels per day, a fraction of its potential, and even that output was fragile. Sanctions later became the final choke point. They didn't destroy the oil underground. They froze the machinery above ground, limiting exports, blocking supplies, scaring off capital. What remains today is not a blank slate. It is a damaged system, one that can be nudged, but not rushed. And when leaders ignore that reality, pressure builds until it breaks into crisis. The first crack appears before a single barrel moves. It happens in the room. Energy executives walk into the White House knowing one thing. They will be asked for commitments, big ones, fast ones. President Trump has already set the tone publicly. He talks about oil flowing again in 18 months, about companies eager to invest billions, about Venezuela coming back online at speed. Inside the industry, that timeline sets off alarms. Executives scramble. They coordinate quietly. They look for a way to say yes without saying too much. The solution they circle around is modest, measured, a promise to increase production by a few 100,000 barrels per day, not overnight, over time, and only under very specific conditions. Sanctions would need to be lifted, supplies would need to move, permissions would need to hold, This is expectation management in real time. If you've ever wondered how power is negotiated behind closed doors, this is it. Careful language, calculated ambiguity, everyone trying to avoid a public collision. But beneath this choreography lies something deeper, a system most people never see. What's really happening here is not hesitation. It's systems thinking. Oil production is not a switch. You don't flip it on because a president wants results. It is a chain, and every link matters. Start with sanctions. They don't just limit sales. They block equipment, financing, insurance, even the chemicals needed to move Venezuela's heavy crude. Then there is infrastructure. Much of it exists, but it is worn, under-maintained, operating below capacity. This is why executives talk about phase one. Not rebuilding, not expansion, just squeezing more output from what already works. Chevron is the key example. It never fully left. It understands the system on the ground. With small regulatory changes, it could do more. Exxon and Conoco are different. They exited. To return, they need rule of law, security, predictability. That gap explains everything. Why promises stay limited. Why timelines stretch. The system is not broken. It is constrained, and constraints define outcomes. When those constraints collide with political pressure, tension escalates fast. This is where the second crisis forms, because political pressure does not pause for systems. President Trump floats an aggressive idea: Venezuela's oil operations up and running in 18 months. A timeline that sounds decisive and impossible. Inside the energy world, the reaction is immediate. Cold, skeptical, almost unanimous. Industry officials quietly push back. Lobbyists lower expectations. Experts point to reality. Restoring Venezuela to its former production above 3 million barrels a day would take tens of billions of dollars every year for more than a decade. That kind of commitment does not come from optimism. It comes from stability. So executives pivot. They emphasize what can be done. Incremental increases using existing infrastructure. Minimal capital, lower risk. This is not defiance. It is damage control. The message is subtle but firm. There is a short game, and there is a long game. Confusing the two leads to failure. And while these negotiations play out at the top, their consequences flow downward to people with no seat at the table. This is where the stakes grow real and personal, because while executives debate in boardrooms, ordinary people pay the price. Venezuela's oil output may have collapsed, but so has its economy. Inflation is rampant. Basic goods are scarce. The country is hanging by a thread. The promise of a return to normalcy, a restored oil sector, means something different to the people living there. It means jobs, stability, food on the table. But there's a catch. The oil executives know that Venezuela's people are not just dependent on oil. They are dependent on the very system that failed them. A system that may not be capable of supporting the kind of revival Trump envisions. And so, while there is talk of billions to come, those who stand to benefit most from recovery remain on the edge. The promises made in Washington won't immediately trickle down. And that, more than anything, sets the true pace of change. But as we look to the future, there's another question we must answer. What will the world look like if this moment fails? The consequences of this moment stretch far beyond Venezuela's borders. What happens here isn't just about oil. It's about power, about geopolitics, about who controls resources when the world's energy future is in flux. Venezuela's oil reserves sit at the center of a geopolitical game. The United States is not alone in eyeing them. China and Russia have also invested in the region, looking to shape the outcome. The global energy market watches closely. Any misstep could create a ripple effect. A failure to stabilize Venezuela could destabilize Latin America. It could tighten global oil supply and send prices soaring. It could also embolden other authoritarian regimes, showing them that the West cannot always secure its interests. In short, the world's attention is focused on this fragile, unpredictable region. The United States may be pushing for a quick fix, but the world is asking if there is a sustainable solution. The question now is, what will happen when the pressure of expectation meets the weight of international realities? To understand the path ahead, we must look to the future. But what does that future hold? The future of Venezuela's oil industry is not written yet. And there are three paths we could take. First, the optimistic scenario. Venezuela's oil industry surges back to life. Sanctions are lifted. Infrastructure is repaired. Private investment floods in. The country moves from crisis to recovery, bringing millions of barrels back online within the next few years. This is the dream, restoring Venezuela's oil power to what it once was. It's possible, but it will take time and a lot of money. Second, the middle road. A slow recovery, incremental increases in output, small steps forward, but never quite enough to fully stabilize the country. The system will recover piece by piece, but Venezuela will remain fragile. Political risk will persist, and energy giants may continue to hold back. Finally, the pessimistic scenario. A failure to revive the oil sector. Investment continues to avoid Venezuela due to instability, poor governance, and lack of security. The country's oil remains locked away, and Venezuela remains an economic and political pariah. These are the three paths. The question is, which one are we headed for? To find the answer, we need to step back and ask one last question. What happens next? We've reached the moment of truth. Venezuela's oil future depends not just on resources, but on leadership, on political will, on the ability to navigate complex systems, avoid unrealistic expectations, and understand the delicate balance of risk. What happens next will not be determined by one meeting, one promise, or one investment. It will be shaped by months of careful negotiations, strategic decisions, and international coordination. The stakes are high, not just for Venezuela, but for global energy stability. If the world learns anything from this moment, it's that speed is often the enemy of progress. Forcing rapid change in a system this fragile will likely lead to more damage. But if we allow the systems to recover at their own pace, if we manage expectations and commit to long-term stability, then Venezuela's oil could again become a cornerstone of the global energy market. The question now is, are we ready to take that risk? The answer may shape the future of global energy for decades to come. So, what happens next? That's a question we'll all need to answer together.